So I just want to give everyone the chance to tell us their interests or what they expect from this. So, someone else?
I'm personally, at least currently, my interests are learning about mutual credit systems and like how to build and maintain reputation networks and how those interact with each other.
Yeah, great. Indeed, that's also an interest I do have too. All of this started in my life by participating in a mutual credit system here in my local town in Santiago de Compostela in Spain. And then I got into all of these mutual credit system designs. I've been following Will Radic, Matthew Slater, and the Holochain movement, and many others that indeed think a lot about these mutual credit systems and reputation systems. I don't know if you guys know some of these references, but yeah, they've inspired me a lot to what I do now. So yeah, thanks. Someone else?
Hola, hello. Hi.
Hi.
Do you hear me well?
Yes.
First time here in Discord, also making a meeting. Thanks to Método Unai to invite me. Maybe I can. See. Right now in Santiago, actually, in Santiago de Compostela.
Are you in
Por
Santiago?
casualidad. Por casualidad, sí.
Wow, that's such a coincidence. We should meet tomorrow or something.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm monitoring grants of European Union for agriculture. And I am forestry engineer. My best land is in north of Alicante. My background is mainly permaculture. I was like near 20 years doing networking of permaculture east of Spain, Levante, southeast. Always our ambition was make impact and regeneration. So from pandemia, I am more into refi, regenerative finance, all this movement. Also G1, Eco Credit, Eco Social Coins, Eco, ¿cómo se llama?
Ecoshares, puede ser.
Eco Charchas. They are in where I am, in Marina Alta, where we create a non-lucrative association that is called Regen Hub Earth for create a regenerative hubs network. This is the vision. Before time, it was a permaculture center for rural development. Yeah, we after a long time coming volunteers, a lot of digital nomads, and this inspired us to create a hub or co-living mix with co-working and permaculture land, and creating tiny house. And yeah, our reference of project is traditional dream factory. I don't know if you saw before. In Portugal, there are a strong movement. In Portugal, actually, is near also Sendeiro. In is a co-living in near here. And yeah, this is for this week. We think this model of timeshare for fractalized properties focus main first in rural timeshare. Do you know this model?
Timeshare, yeah. The time
Yeah.
bank, no, these things.
No,
You mean
timeshare is use is based on is ¿cómo se diría? Tiempo compartido. How to make use of the property by time. You are and this token they tokenize this. So do you imagine a co-living that you use 1 week a year, and you have the week.
Oh.
And this is the way that we're proposing for creating local impact in rural, because make access to global community to local through this way, like regenerative tourism, and the same credit to the same token to make use for local impact. Something. This is the resume the Astra a little bit. Unai know a little bit more. But yeah, I'm very happy to be here and we to know a bit more about crypto lefties the bread chain. Interesting, the bread chain vision with the cooperative, tokenization. Like, thank you.
That's nice. Thank you. And I would also love to know more about blockchain. And I may be a little be behind on all the last developments on DeFi and DAOs. So if you guys wanted to know more about this precise thing, maybe I'm not the one to ask for. But yeah, very interesting indeed. Very interesting backgrounds. So do we have something more like short points to have into account through the exposition or whatever? Someone else wants to. It's not mandatory, of course. Yes. No.
Well,
Oh.
I know we have a researcher here, which is
Mhm.
very nice, and someone like developers also. Um, yep, and some
Okay.
governance freaks, nerds, facilitators. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So yeah, what I wanted to share today is like maybe more. I consider myself also a governance nerd. I'm not very into technology itself, but voting systems or ways in which we can take more democratic decisions together is something I'm very passionate about too. But what I wanted to share maybe is a little background or a little in a more abstract and more wide range of things. What I could share with you is what I've been thinking or doing in terms of what money is and what money can do for us in order to organize a different world. You know? So yeah, I may start with my own experience. How did I get into all of this topic? And it all started with a local community here in Santiago, which had roots on 15M, this grassroots movement that took the streets and the squares in Spain in 2011 or 2012, I don't remember. And some of the people from there wanted to get practical, no? to start to change more and more parts of our own lives and make them more communitary, make them more independent of other structures that we have created, like the state or maybe like markets, no, or the money system. And one way that we heard about was this social currencies system. And they created a social currency here in Santiago, which was a mutual credit system. That is, you enter at zero and you can spend before you earn and you go into negative, but there are some uh, negative limits so that nobody can go too much into the negative side of things. And for every negative balance, there is a positive balance elsewhere so that the total sum of all balances is zero. That's the first money system that I encountered besides our normal credit money system. And that made me think for a
Sorry?
while it was working good. Yeah, sorry.
How was it called, or how is it called?
It was called Landra, and the project was Proyecto Integral Compostela. Maybe I can try to look for it and put it in the chat maybe later. The thing is, it's not longer running. It didn't last for too long, and I was very interested on improving it so that it could try to. Yeah, there it is. Thank you. I was thinking about how to improve it because I observed the following things. One thing that happened is that even if we said that the negative limit was minus 50, whenever someone joined, the program we used, which was Community Exchange System, this platform which was free and many social currencies that then used it, it didn't have a hard limit on the negative side. So if a free rider entered the system and started spending a lot of money, it could actually spend to minus infinity. There wasn't any hard cap on the on the negative limit. Also, there was this problem of trust, because if you know that someone can enter the system and spend like crazy, and there is no real way to stop it, then you start asking people how much money do they have before you accept them paying you or selling to them something. So money stops being useful in the sense like it doesn't prove anything. You have to see the actual person, what do they do for earning it and how is their balance in order for, even if they can pay, you have to make sure how did they earn this money. So it kind of made things very meshy, very how do you say, chaotic or tedious. It was very hard to use this currency. It wasn't very useful to organize ourselves. And so also we needed to know the person beforehand to invite them to the group. So the group, once it reached a size like 100 people or so, it didn't grow much because for new people to enter, they have to be friends or friends or friends and share this common view of being alternative or something like that. And we kind of ran out of these kind of people in my town because it's not very big. And well, what do you do with a currency that only has 100 users? There is not that much real goods and services backing the value of this currency. And some of the people didn't find what they needed and they left. And what happened is that there was some monetary mass created through spending and earning. And as people went away, the currency, there were less places to spend it, and we suffered kind of an inflation. The prices were rising. No, there was not very much use for the currency we had. And we observed this problem of people coming, spending, and then leaving. And then what do we do with this monetary mass? Because there are few things to buy with it. So it's pointless to accept it. So if I am going to accept it, I want more. So the prices went up. But in reality, they didn't even went up because we ended up knowing each other so well that we found out that we didn't need any kind of money to exchange between ourselves. And this is something important. I realized that money is an invention that appeared when we had big cities and we interacted with strangers all of the time, one in a lifetime interaction with someone you don't know anything about, and you don't share the same kind of culture or values or something like that. So in our small community, we knew each other. We shared a lot of common values. We interacted many, many times. We have a lot of common interests, and it was much easier to use all these kind of reputational systems that all villages have in the world. Like I know my neighbors. I know who came to help with this common task that we had, and we keep in our mind kind of a reputation or you can name it as you want, honor, or the social value systems that regulate social life and community life, and that can, in a way, affect how we collectively take decisions together, or what aims do we pursue, and how do we organize the work, and how do we redistribute the products. So yeah, that was something that made me think about money a lot. Like, wow, I saw that like money is not really needed. We have other tools to organize society, and I thought, yeah, laws and the state can be one of these ways. Also, education, culture, values. There are many ways in which people try to influence how we collectively do things together. But I still thought that money was very useful in the sense that it decentralizes decision making. It creates a kind of an incentive system. It's kind of a game where the more you do for the community, the more you can take from the community to you. And there is always like a how do you say, a ecological niche or ecological need for this kind of tools, because we interact with people in very different levels or layers. We may have our community, closest friends, family, and we know each other so well, and the informal reputational systems work very well. We may relate with a big brother community, our city, our village, maybe our country or something like that, and we may share common values, and so we don't require this much reciprocity in terms of precisely measuring how much do you take from the community, how much do you give, no? And it has to match. But there will always be people with which we don't have too much common interest, or we don't trust each other too much. But still, we may want to find some common benefit in interacting in some exchange of goods and services. And then there money can be useful. And even if we take more like maybe even if we create a state that or our own community institutions or rules, there can also always be space for for markets to be there. And in my opinion, it's maybe the big decisions of how do we want the economy, who does the economy serve, and so on, may be taken collectively. There is space for democracy, for direct democracy, or institutions, or voting systems, and some things like that. But there will always be like a layer of perfection or optimization or innovation in the small things that the markets may do very well. Allowing people to take risks and be the ones that are responsible for if this project goes well or not is something I think it's kind of a freedom that helps us coordinating in a decentralized way. And some of you may argue maybe it's not needed. Maybe we can get rid of markets. And I'm not sure, but for the moment, it seems like a small step forward to at least have better markets, at least have markets that align more with the values that the community have. And money is an important tool to shape how markets work. Because, for example, in Alhambra, in this currency that we use in Santiago, it was created by us, by the users, by spending or earning. When there was exchanges, there was more monetary mass being created. Some of the merchants needed more negative limits, and we had to take a collective decision to increase the negative limits of some users, and it was not very optimized in this sense, no? But at least it created this layer of trust so that exchanges could work together. How did this trust work? Well, it actually needed that all of us trust the currency, even if we don't know each other too much. We trust that this thing that we were accepting for an exchange would be useful in the future. So when you cannot trust the people, you can trust the tool, and this is something that sometimes is the case for this. In other terms, the current monetary system that we have, many of you may be aware of how it works, but it's important to notice that most of the monetary mass, most of the euros, the dollars, the whatever currency you think about, are created by the private banking system whenever they issue loans. Banks can create new money when somebody asks them for a loan and borrows money. They don't have to take it from anywhere else. They can just type it somewhere. Because what we use as money in society is bank promises to pay. Banks promising that you can take money from the cashier whenever you want, or you can transfer your money to another bank. This is the promise that the bank makes you. But for the most, we don't ask this promise to be fulfilled because this promise is like money. We ended up using money, these promises, as if they were the thing behind it. So yeah, that's something I just noticed. And it wasn't the first time in history that something like this happens. For example, debts were also used in Babylonia by the Sumerian states. The debts that were written in clay sometimes could circulate as a means of payment, and once the debt is deemed to be redeemed, the one that holds the clay table could be the one that receives the payment of whatever amount of wheat or cattle or something that it worked. So, it's easy that promises becomes a means of payment when these promises are accepted and trusted by everyone. In the Sumerian state, the emperor or whatever ensured that debts had to be repaid. This most of the time is, there was also the Jubilee year where all debts are destroyed, and that was also something interesting to know from them. But most of the time, debts had to be repaid, and they were trusted by most of the merchants and so on. So yeah, that was just to say the point that the way money enters circulation and the way money is created shapes how society and the economy functions. At this moment, our economy is devoted to serve the needs of the rich people that get rich by holding most of the assets, by holding most of the housing, land, and financial assets in the world. And most money is created to buy and purchase more of these assets, creating an ever-rising bubble that is fueled by the new money that is always being created. And when this bubble bursts, the state has to rescue the banks, because otherwise these promises would be worth zero. And as our savings are promises from the banks, all of our savings, or most of the savings of the economy, would disappear, and the economy cannot function at this moment only with cash. No, so there would be a very big financial crisis, because we lose most of the means of exchange that the economy needs to keep running. So yeah, when I realized this was the way in which money is created today, I just was desperate to find other ways of money, how different ways of money could affect how we organize. And I thought that whatever we do, like a social movement or a revolution or something, we also have to challenge the power of the monetary system with our own money system. And it can be an array of different currencies on a local level, international level, decentralized, digital, physical, mutual credit, asset-like, and the more diversity we have, I think it's something great. But at this moment, for me, it's very interesting also to challenge why the state supports this very, very bad monetary design. No, I mean, even people that don't have this revolution or utopian values at heart may realize that the current monetary system is so bad that even right wing, left wing, the kind of normal people that boast to the actual politicians of today may want a big change there. And I realized that there was maybe the space or the opportunity for this kind of battle in the ideas ground and lobbying and so on, and that the repercussions would be very, very big. So even though I'm very skeptical of the whole state thing and institutions and so on, I engaged with all of this debate, the public debate that some organizations like Positive Money in the UK were promoting. I found that it was maybe worth it to try to convince people and politicians and policymakers that it's obvious that banks creating our money has a lot of problems, and if the state created a money that wasn't created through debt, but as an asset in itself that could be created and given to people directly, and so that we do not depend on bank promises for our payment system and savings, then we may, save most of the state spends on rescuing banks and helping the banks to have extraordinary profits and so on. And it's such a huge amount of money that we would save, and it's such a change for the monetary system and all the financial powers and the assets, the financial assets, they all depend on this scheme of the state rescuing the banks each time they do bad loans. If we had a public money, we could maybe afford to let the banks crash and not rescue them. And those that bet for these crazy bets like ever rising growth, ever rising wars, ever rising fuel extraction, we may be able to say them, fuck you at this moment, and we are not going to rescue you, and you bet for destruction of humanity, so now you pay for it, because we collectively decide that this cannot go forever. So I think it's a very strong political tool in order to kind of try to take the money, the power from the banking sector and from the financial sector into maybe the state, but also it would allow for a lot more the competition in currencies. We could afford to have every kind of social currency, cryptocurrency, and so on to compete with the public state money. And the states don't have to regulate, don't have to protect, because whoever wants to use the currency is the one holding the real risks of it losing the value. At the moment, those that choose to hold bank deposits are not holding any value and any risk. They are insured by the state. So this doesn't make sense. We would create the conditions for other kinds of money to really compete with bank money creation. That is today 90% of the money. Right. So yeah, I think that it is interesting to see the parallels or the synergies between these two fights. And even though you may be very skeptical about the state or making change into the state, I am too. But sometimes it's worth it to try crazy things. You know, I like to infiltrate whenever there is the chance, and you know, nobody knows what works well or not. For example, I have this I wanted to talk maybe a little bit about Faircoin, or maybe a little bit about Holochain, because those are two projects very close to your interests maybe, because they are cryptocurrencies. They were also thinking about this. How do we have hardware technology? How do we support with an infrastructure that is not controlled either by enterprises or by the state? So I think that's also very interesting to have. But Faircoin, the case of Faircoin was very interesting to me, because Faircoin, for example, had this monetary design of, we have this amount of money created from the beginning. We have all these shared values of creating a fair economy for the global south. They created these villages, these integral cooperatives or projects that aimed for real communitization of the means of production, right? And the values, I shared them a lot and so on. So I entered this Faircoin thing, but it had this problem. Once you have a fixed amount of money, whenever people start entering Faircoin and buying Faircoin and using Faircoin and offering things for Faircoin in Galicia, here where I live, we were kind of one of the places in the world that had more merchants accepting Faircoin. And I myself accepted it for vegan food meals that we did for commonly held meals in Santiago. But the thing was this: once more people uses the currency and you have a fixed amount, what happens with the value of the currency? The value of the currency starts increasing and the prices start decreasing. So we experience book deflation, no? The typical deflation that you may experience. And deflation creates very weird and very strong redistribute effects. Those that enter the currency at the beginning, maybe me, I entered the currency with 60 euros. I bought like, I don't know, 300 Faircoins or something like that. After 1 year or two, these 300 Faircoins were worth 300 euros or maybe more. So it was weird how just by being first here, I was compensated, or my benefits were immense. It was multiplied by 5 or so, right? So, and this happened even more strong. I multiplied by 5, but others multiplied by 50 or 500, what they put in the beginning. And this ever-rising price also attracts a lot of speculators that only wanted Faircoin to sell it later for a higher price. And the price entered in this bubble dynamic that coincidence with the first Bitcoin bubble into the 20,000s that occurred back in, I don't even remember, before the COVID pandemic, I believe. So yeah, and this was a problem. And I realized that this design, even though it was well intended, had these crucial problems. There is always this tension of automatization. Once, for example, you want to get rid of the decision of how much money do we create and how do we put it in circulation. It is great not to have to decide that, but it creates rigidities. It creates less adaptability to the actual size of the community and of the production of goods and services that you have backing the value of the currency. This is something that is a trade-off that we have to decide how do we want to go about. I also created a currency in Galicia called Asavia that for like 5 years we tried desperately to create this critical mass of people accepting it and so on, but we failed at it too. And in this case, we were able to decide in an assembly how much money do we create and to what use do we put it. We chose that some collective actions, like participating in taking care of the forest, like bringing down eucalyptus and planting other species, local species, or taking care of rivers or organizing community events or something like that, there, new money is created and given to those that participate there. That's how we chose to put money into circulation. And this creates the incentives for an economy that focus around these collective spaces of value creation that is more like intangible and has positive externalities. And yeah, but we have this power. We could create money as much as we wanted, and we could choose how to put it in circulation. We wanted to create the amount in proportion to the size of our community. And how do we put it? By gifting it to volunteers that engage in community building and taking care of the environment. So yeah, I've encountered recently the currency G1 that some of you mentioned before, and they chose also to use blockchain and decentralized architecture, which is very good. But also they chose to have a constant money creation decided by an algorithm that creates like 10% each year of the monetary mass increases per person, also per person. The more people there are, the more money is created, and each year it increases like 10%. Excuse me, I may go for a little bit of water, but yeah, most of what I wanted to, yeah, that is G1 precisely. I found like some problems of the G1 were these rigidities. Maybe some users enter and don't offer things, or maybe sometimes the community grows a lot, but the amount of currency doesn't, and so the price changes a lot, and it creates problem. Some people may accept it thinking it's very worthy. 1 year later, it's worth much less, and this disincentivizes people and creates perverse redistribution effects. And that's something I'm very aware of. I'm always very cautious about what happens. So yeah, I may have many other things to share with you, but again, I really like to keep them related to the interests of you guys here. So let me go for a sip of water, and I come back maybe, and we can have a more broad discussion if you want. Unai, do you agree? Is that
Awesome.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll be back. 1 minute. Oh no, not 1 minute. I have it here. So you can, whoever wants to take the floor again, just go ahead.
Yeah, I had a technical question regarding the Faircoin setup, which is, if I'm not mistaken, essentially really a fork of the original Bitcoin wallet and blockchain. So the problem with Bitcoin as a popular coin is that you need to download hundreds of gigabytes of blocks on your computer to have a self-sufficient wallet and to be part of the network. And many other coins have very similar setups. That does raise barriers for people participating in them, right? So how do you look at that?
Yeah, and that was something real. Many people couldn't understand Faircoin because they didn't know how to set up a wallet. They didn't understand why it took so long for the wallet to like update the state of the current blockchain or something like that. They were very prone to lose the keys or the cryptographic keys, and it wasn't very user friendly in that sense. And that was indeed a barrier, an entering barrier. But there was something interesting too, which was that we replaced the proof of work algorithm by a proof of cooperation algorithm that in reality, what we had was like 7 or 20 nodes that we trusted. Like the network was in a way losing decentralization in the sense that we trust these 7 or 20, I don't remember the amount, these nodes, and they just randomly did the tasks of processing transactions and creating the next blocks. So it didn't consume any energy whatsoever, but it had this drawback of having to trust these blocks. And these blocks were in the hands of those that created the Faircoin coin. So in a sense, for entering Faircoin, you had to trust those that created it. You have to really trust the core group that started the thing. You may share a lot of values with them and so on, but not everybody likes this point of centralization. Even so, it traded on the markets, and a lot of speculators bought into it. So in a sense, it was an amazing experiment. We had a currency created by our own that exploded in market value, and at some point we could have sell many of these currency and get the euros back or something to finance projects and so on. But we didn't. We held it, and the bubble went down, and most of us that we trusted Faircoin ended up losing a lot of money. So it was a really bad experience in this sense.
And what would your take be for the future, given these lessons?
Well, for a primer, I wouldn't trust things so quickly. You know, kind of, we have bubble mentalities, and when you are in a close group, you start to brainwash yourself. You know, I was very excited, the other one was very excited, and we dreamed like crazy. You know, and you know, my take on this is that we should have things more simpler and closer to what people already is doing. I wouldn't go very far because we need critical mass. And I'm sorry, we have to try with something broader and less ambitious until we have this critical mass, or else we risk that people that are interested on this kind of projects that may kickstart another economy feel betrayed at some point. And the damage you do to future projects it's immense. At least for my currency here in Galicia, it's a little bit disappointing for a lot of people that entered it and had a lot of money, like 100 savias or something like that, and at the end they cannot spend it. So I feel a little bit bad about this. No, there is a risk on using these currencies, which is it stops being used. Yeah, so for the one thing I would love to not to repeat is to maybe be less about the theory and the common values and so on, and you know, let give people something useful, something they can get value from the get-go, and don't be too picky on who joins your movement. As long as there is a little bit of synergy, I think that it's enough. And I know in Portugal a project which is having a lot of success, which is called Minga, is like an eco village, but actually what they agree upon is only one thing. They do the, how do you say, facture. Well, they interact with the state through one cooperative. The taxes and the accounting and all of this that everyone has to do, they do it together, and they get fiscal benefits because of being a cooperative and so on. And they do not ask that you are totally ecological, totally thinking about social things and so on. As long as you live there, you have the chance to participate. And these things, I think, have been more successful than the more ambitious leftist to the core kind of projects. And you know, I'm in this path right now of really, really going very far to find this critical mass. Sometimes you even have to engage in political things. So it's like, oh no, are we now trying to convince the European Union to do something different? You know, but that's what I found, at least some theme that could work together and that we could, uh, yeah, no, like find each other and have interesting conversations, because otherwise we are very few, and we tend to exaggerate our capacities or so. But you know, you can ask other people about Faircoin maybe, and they will tell you something radically different maybe. Some of them may be very angry. I know very angry people, but some of them still think it was a good idea, but at some point we have problems in managing. We promised, for example, to many merchants that they could change their Faircoins into euros, but there were like 50 million Faircoins around, and we only have 50,000 euros. You know, this was problematic, and at some point the euros were gone. You know, like the one that had the euros didn't have it, and it was like, what did you do with them, and so on. And you know, it wasn't good.
I do have other questions, but I don't know if I'm just clogging up other people. So.
Yeah, let's see if somebody else wants to put something on the table, and then we go back to you maybe. Yeah. Please, you guys, come on, you come here to participate. This is Discord. This is 21st century. We can all be part of the thing.
I like what you were saying about challenging the monetary system.
Well, maybe people don't want to talk. Okay, that's good too. So, Migi Mofongo says, I like what you were saying about challenging the monetary system. Thanks. I guess. How can I expand on that? Yeah, I really want to challenge the monetary system. And I tell you this, I'm being very, very risky. I'm trying to get into the system in order to try to change it from the inside. That's maybe very naive on my part, but if you ask me, my plan is to be on Spanish central bank soon and try to convince some people there that what we are doing is crazy in every way you can possibly think it. But yeah, I think it's good that you have. If you have more questions, Q Collective, yes, go ahead and
Okay.
tell us. Yeah.
So I was just during the introduction saying that I was running a cybernetic economics study group,
Mhm.
and one of the basic ideas of it is that money, if you will, plays a role in tracking down both production and consumption. It links it together in feedback loops. So I was wondering if you have any thoughts about if you're talking about money reform and having an economy planned for human needs, should money play a part in that planning, in your view?
That's interesting. I'm not sure. I've been thinking about this for a long time. There is a very good video on YouTube. I may want to share it with you later, which is about trying to imagine a society without money. And it's pretty convincing. I mean, it's not out of the reach of humans to organize ourselves without a money system because these money incentives are a little bit silly in a way. Because if we were really educated in a non-materialistic society with respect to nature, with a balance and equilibrium of what we can take and get from society, I think that the best motivator for doing things shouldn't be getting things back. What kind of person does this? No, you give your best, you try to create this amazing project only because you want to also consume this and consume that. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, even though it may play a role because not everybody will reach this mature state of moral state where you just do your best and take what you really need and that's it. And we may still want to have that to deal with these points in our society of people that didn't reach this state, and we may want also to have them uh, integrated in our society. So I'm not sure, I'm not sure what we can, but for sure we could have a planned economy and for many, many things without much problem. But there is also challenges ahead, which is how do we take collective decisions in a way that doesn't create corruption, incentives. And I've seen many leftist parties or many social movements have very, very bad social dynamics inside, like power dynamics. Even though we know the theory, we end up acting authoritarian, we end up acting complot making, let's get rid of this one because his ideas I don't like, and sometimes we end up doing the kind of harms that society does. We end up being with machistas. I don't know how to say this in English, or this happens all the time. So I'm not very, I don't trust too much our abilities. Like, I think we tend to have very bad collective decision making. So I wouldn't deny the more we diversify this collective decision making, the better. And markets are always a way to do this. I just think that we need good regulation so that markets are aligned with what we society want to achieve. So, for example, I would put a lot of incentives for cooperative movements for all these activities that have positive externalities, localization of the economy, and so on. So maybe there is ways to create the incentives, but then allow people to take the decisions themselves, to take the risks themselves, and yeah, to decide what they want. I think markets may be useful to optimize in the optimization layer. No, where do you want this restaurant, here or there? How do you want it to function, this way or the other? So yeah, and being actually like realist, we are so far that we can take this, all the markets away. That I think for now it would be just better to do a step forward. Try for people to imagine a world without markets is kind of impossible. So why don't imagine markets that work much better? And many people are concerned with their own liberties and so on, and they are aware of the problems of the state, decision making, and corruption. So yeah, I don't think it's not possible to have markets being used for a good purpose. But maybe I'm wrong. I love these kind of conversations. I'm very happy to be here and talking about this, actually.
Yeah, I have a question. We usually finish like at the top of the hour, but I mean we are all free to remain or leave if we want. Like what is like what would be like the basic, like some basic specifications of the like the reforms that you would like to introduce, like in your infiltration work there at the Central Bank of Spain?
Yeah, it is actually very simple because the kind of system that we have today is complex and stupid at the same time. So, what I would want that we achieve is first that we have a public money system that is not dependent on any private actor doing something. So I would love that we not only have cash, which I would defend for sure, but that we have a digital version of cash, which is created in the same kind of monetary design that cash is created today. That is created by the state without any debt attached to no one, like an asset in itself that could be managed through a digital register or something like that, in the same as the property register. No, you could have a monetary register where you just see how much money does someone has at some point. In this sense, it is like cash. Of course, it doesn't have this privacy attached. It is all digital is always problematic, and public digital is always problematic in the sense that you have to trust the institution that creates it, of course. But it could be created in a private way. It could be created in a more private way, or for example, they are discussing central bank digital currencies a lot, and some of the design choices there are not so bad. I mean, they could actually be a game changers in the sense that if you have public money available so that people can hold a kind of currency that at the moment only banks can hold, the banks already have deposits on the central bank, which are risk-free, totally risk-free, because the central bank is supporting them. The central bank cannot default on these deposits. And they do not accept each bank, they do not accept other banks' promises to pay as money. Banks want the real thing. At the end of the day, they liquidate the transactions and they have their own bank money reserves at the end. So the thing is, to open these reserves to everyone would allow for people to have a choice and not to have their savings on bank promises, and they could instead have them as central bank promises or like state money. This way, all the money that is needed in the economy can be created without depending on more debt acquisition. Because right now, if the state thinks that we need more money in the economy, what they do, incentivize lending and borrowing, because it's the only way to increase the money supply. And this is very problematic because these debts cannot be repaid in this kind of system where the rich people can hoard money, can put it into the financial assets and speculation bubbles, and people, working class and the global south countries cannot earn this money back, and their debts grow exponentially, and they end up like losing all of their assets in order to be able to pay these debts. So they are used as a mass destruction and mass control facility. So our current money system would be in a way challenged, because if people move their money from bank deposits to this public digital asset, there wouldn't be need for example, government debt at all and interest payments from the government to private investors. There wouldn't be the need to rescue any kind of bank, because if people chooses to have this risky asset, bank promises, they should be losing the money when the bank crashes. Because you had a chance, you had an alternative. Right now, you don't have it. And you can also reduce a lot of the regulations of the banks, and a lot of the protections, a lot of the benefits and privileges that they have. And it's amazing how much do we have. It's like at least 14 privileges. I've been working with the former governor of the Bank of Spain on this regard, and he has identified 14 ways we subsidize banks in order for them to not crash and to help them to have benefits and so on. So this would allow us to have a complete deregulated and free and really competing on level playing field money system. Everybody could create their own currency, and people could choose from one or the other and bear the risks themselves. You open up this possibility that right now is always being controlled, and they try to prohibit the stable coins, and the MiCA regulation, for example, is very restrictive. And this wouldn't be needed if we have a stable money system, because most of the money that people chooses to have is completely risk-free, but also interest payment free. But yeah, that's in a sense what the state could do. But what I would love to do to have society do, having this change, of course, so that the banking sector loses these privileges, and some of the space that is open could be also filled by bottom-up approaches of currency, local currencies, social currencies, cryptocurrencies, and other kinds of projects that try to do better than what the state can do, because the state itself can always make mistakes, can create more than it's needed, can put in circulations in ways we don't like it, or maybe it is not private enough. But then if you have a favorable regulation so that there is innovation in payments and money creation, then maybe we have much better chances for our projects that right now are suffocated by this subsidized banking sector that creates most of the money. I hope I answered the question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Great. Let me read some of the comments. Well, seizing the banking system from the corporations, I don't think this is easy, because banks have invested so much in lending to big corporations that right now, if you want to protect the banks, you have to protect the big corporations. And what we say is that we seize banks from money. Right now we have to rescue the banks to save them the savings of normal people, and this link would be broken. And the state could permit itself to say, no, banks, you have made bad loans, and your corporations you lend to are not going to survive because no more fossil fuels or not more wars. So I'm sorry, no, not more this. And then we could afford to have the banks crash and go away. And there wouldn't be any problem, because the payment system itself would be working, and financing and lending would take place in a direct way, in a P2P way. Like if you lend money, you don't have it. Right now, it's not like that. Banks can create money each time they give a loan. So they don't have a constraint on where do they put their money. For example, we have promoted a lot of green investment and green lending, but this hasn't reduced the amount of fossil fuel lending, because there is not a constraint. There is not like a fixed amount of money that can be lent. So if you promote this, then the other is reduced. No, right now, both are growing. Green energy transition is growing, and also fossil fuel investments and lending is growing too. It doesn't, this couldn't happen in another system, because we wouldn't be subsidizing by public insurance all of these money creation for these purposes. And of course, fact the what e-cash, right? We cannot say that digital cash is cash in the sense that it has the same kind of levels of privacy or so, but it has this same issuer, which is the state, and it has the same way of issuing, which is asset-like, not debt attached. So in a way, it moves away from mutual credit systems or debt money, and in a sense, it would be like an asset in itself, and that's It's very important for our movements, positive money, dinero positivo in Spain, in general, the international movement for monetary reform. That's where I'm doing most of my activism right now. We share this idea that money shouldn't be created out of debt, at least not the state money. And I would argue that even if in our communities, it is good to separate the two functions for simplicity reasons. Yeah. Well, I don't know how to answer that. Yeah, political problems, all of these are political problems. We society have to decide how we want our economy to work, but thinking about what kind of money would allow this is very useful. Indeed, I'm very eager to know more about the projects that you people are working on, and maybe learn a little bit more, because for a while I was a little bit left behind on this regard. And I will probably be spending some time here in this bread chain Discord channel. So if anybody wants to just write me and we can have a meeting, one-on-one meeting, I'm always learning. So I'm very, very pleased to have this opportunity too. Yeah, well, so I may leave it there. What do you think, Unai? Has it been enough? Yeah.
I think Quasardilla wants to say something.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, Mario. I'm actually chatting with the red team about doing some of the documentation. So could you read through it without us saying anything and let me know what you think, and then we can kind of run you through the things and we can sort of so I can explain aspects of it to you if you like. But I just kind of want to see someone's fresh eyes, but is well versed in the sort of initiatives that we're trying to do. I just want to see what your first impressions are, what you got from it, and then how we can adapt to make it more accessible to more people.
Yeah, I can try. I tried once. Unai told me if I could do that, please. And I remember I tried, but I really haven't got the time to do it. But if you ask me this twice, I may really do it. So yeah, maybe I can commit to check the documentation and try to see if I can understand the monetary system behind it, what backs the value, if it makes sense in a redistributable sense, and so yeah, each time I see a cryptocurrency, I always try to look how much money, how is it created, who decides that, how it enters circulations, what kinds of utility does it have so that the value is backed by something, and so on. So yeah, I can do it maybe.
Awesome, thanks.
Great. Do we have any final comments before we finish? Did you like it?
Yeah, it was interesting.
Interesting. Only interesting. Come on. I think it's the most interesting topic in the world.
Bit interesting. This pass.
Okay. That's enough for me. But yeah, there are so many interesting things around, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Alright.
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I found it interesting. Yeah, I would really like to know, well, I didn't share much, but what each of us has in our mind now. Like, if anyone wants to share, I would really like to know. I mean, I sometimes assume that everyone here is much aware or aware of most of what you were sharing, but I don't know. And then that we decide to go into different different strategies to tackle this situation, which is basically what you also suggest, right? Yeah, trying. So, but thanks a lot.
Yeah,
really
thanks, Mario.
appreciate
I
you
learned pretty nice to see the amount of stuff that you're about in this space with different initiatives that I've never actually seen before. So I've been opening up all the links. So I'm going to be checking everything out after this chat.
Great. I'm so happy. Nice. Well, thanks a lot, guys, for listening to me. I think it's very, very precious time nowadays. So I'm amazed. I'm amazed that we reached such an audience. Okay, so I'll be sticking around to the channel. So whenever you want, just please contact me, and I'll be more than happy to give feedback or learn about what you have to teach me. So yeah, thanks Unai a lot for inviting me.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mario.
Gracias, Mario. Nos vemos.
Venga, chao.
Chao,
Adiós.
gracias.
Chao.
Thanks, everyone.